Hello and welcome to Changing World. My name is Anthony Smith, and today I'm very pleased to introduce a new guest to the show by the name of George Chanos. Now, George served as Nevada's 31st Attorney General, the state's chief legal officer and advisor. Prior to serving as Nevada's Attorney General, Mr. Chanos had a distinguished legal career representing both individuals and corporate clients. He currently serves as chairman of the board and a principal shareholder of Capriotti's Sandwich Shop, which now has more than 110 stores in around about 20 different states in North America. And it's also a very fast-growing franchise, one of the fastest in the country. Now, for the past 30 years, he has advised people from all walks of life on how to address and resolve some of the most challenging problems facing them. He's now writing and speaking with the goal of helping others to lead a better life. His latest book, Millennial Samurai, A Mindset for the 21st Century, advises readers how to surf the technological tsunami ahead. So, welcome, George, to the Changing World podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, that's great. We're very pleased to have you here. I'd like to ask you, as just to start, what was it like serving as Nevada's Attorney General and arguing before the United States Supreme Court?
It was an extraordinary opportunity for which I will forever be grateful. I love the law, and I love analyzing the problems that face Nevada and dealing with those problems. And the opportunity to argue before America's Supreme Court was really one of the true highlights of my life. As I look back upon my life, other than the birth of my daughter, arguing before the United States Supreme Court was really the most impactful moment that I had in my life. And it was extraordinary.
Right. Well, I'm sure you had many dramatic moments in the courtroom, and obviously we won't go into any detail on that. But I understand you've also had a very successful business career. As I previously mentioned, you're the chairman of Capriotti's Sandwich Shops, with over 100 stores now in North America. So, and many more planned, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, we have over 100 opened and operating profitably, and we have over an additional 100 that have signed franchise agreements and have committed to opening stores throughout the United States. So we will be at 200 stores shortly, and it's one of the fastest growing quick service restaurant franchises in the United States. And I'm very honored to be chairman of the board of that company, and I'm one of the primary shareholders of the company.
Right. Well, that's great. What would you say has made it such a success and growing so rapidly? What's contributed to that?
It's really the same thing that makes every other business successful, which is a quality offering and a strong value proposition. So we created a line of sandwiches that people are genuinely enthusiastic about. We call them raving disciples. And they're raving disciples because they go on social media and they blog for as much as 4 pages about their experience eating the sandwiches. And some have compared them to the first time they had sex, and others have compared them to what they think it would be like. They've never tried heroin, but what they think it would be like. And we've had people that tell stories about driving across 4 different state lines, driving for 12 hours to go find a store because there's none in their area. So we're only in 20 states. So if you live in one of the other 30 states in the United States, you've got to travel to go get one of our sandwiches. And we have people that have driven 12 hours to go get sandwiches for a husband's birthday and bring them back. We've had people that have driven their cars and filled up their trunk with sandwiches and brought them back to their neighborhood and delivered them to people who had placed orders with them to go on that drive. So it's a 40-year-old brand. It's been around for 40 years. We acquired the company 10 years ago, and we've taken it from 40 stores to over 100, and with another 100 on the way. And we're just branching out throughout the United States, and eventually we'll be in the UK, and we'll be in, all over the place.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. I mean, we do have quite a number of franchises. Obviously, the first one was McDonald's, wasn't it? you can't miss that one, can you? But Papa John's is a popular one. Papa John's pizzas.
Yeah,
that's a very popular one. We see them all over the place. So I'm sure it will happen. I'm sure it will get over here eventually. So anyway, I'd like to just ask you actually, what qualities would you say have helped you become so successful, and what advice would you give to anyone listening as regards achieving more and really achieving their goals in life?
Okay, well, I believe that the 4 pillars of a successful life, at least in my life, I can't speak for everyone, but in my life, I found that as I look back upon my life and I try to trace what were the causes of some of the success that I've experienced, I keep coming back to 4 things: character, courage, commitment, and compassion. Those to me are the 4 cornerstones of a happy, successful, and meaningful life. So character, if you don't have good character, no one is going to want to deal with you. No one is going to want to do business with you, right?
Sure.
Even among there's a saying, there's honor among thieves. Even among thieves, even among bad people, they still prize character. In other words, if you're robbing a bank and you've got a getaway driver, you need to make sure he shows up on time, right? Right? If he's not dependable, he's no use to you, right? So dependability and character comes with character, right?
Right.
And people who have character are dependable, right?
Okay.
And you have to have that to succeed.
Okay.
Courage, you have to be able to overcome your fears. You need to step out of your comfort zone. You need to try new things. And you need to have an open mind and be willing to accept information from outside sources that you may disagree with or that may challenge your ego. These things require courage, right?
Yep.
Commitment, you have to be committed to what it is that you want. Things in life, good things in life, don't come easily. They require commitment. They require day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Marriages require commitment. Going to college requires commitment. Getting a degree, learning a trade skill, all of these things require commitment. And your commitment is also tied to your character. Integrity, people who have integrity honor their commitments. If you're part of a team environment, you understand that your other teammates are depending upon you.
Yeah.
And so you're committed to the enterprise. If you're trying to build a business, you understand that it's not going to happen overnight, that you have to work at it day after day for years, sometimes for decades. And
Yeah.
this is all about commitment. So understanding the importance of commitment. And then finally, compassion. I really believe, and I've come to believe even more over the last several years that I've been studying what's going on in the world more intently and looking at the future more intently. I've become more and more convinced that compassion is a huge part of a successful life. It's been a huge part of my life, and it's also a huge part, I think, of society's future going forward. That we used to think about compassion as altruism, that it was the right thing to do, to be compassionate. and it's the other person needs it, and so we should provide it. I like to talk to people. I believe that Milton Friedman, who won a Nobel Prize in economics for the observation that people are motivated by self-interest. If you want to get someone to do something, you want to appeal to their self-interest, right? So I like to talk to people about why compassion towards other people is in their self-interest, okay? Forget about what you're doing for the other person. We all know that. We all understand that. That's obvious. A poor person on the side of the road who has no money, if you give them money or you give them food, it's obvious what you're doing for them. But what's not so obvious is what you're doing for yourself. And what you're doing for yourself is you are actually physiologically modifying yourself through your acts of compassion. So there have been studies that show that the acts of compassion produce 100% more DHEA in our bodies, which reduces aging and stress, and so being compassionate actually has a physiological benefit to you. Number one. Number two, I believe that we as a species, that all people are profoundly interdependent, and the fact that we're interdependent means that if we have people all around us who are failing, who are struggling, who are not getting by, that ultimately their misery and their problems will come back to visit us. And so, for example, you look at the French Revolution, right? And the poor revolting and overthrowing the government, right? So you can't allow these festering pockets of humanity to continue to toil and suffer, and assume that that's going to happen silently and without consequence to you. It is going to have consequence to you. So it is in your self-interest to help other people. It is not only altruism and the right thing to do and the compassionate thing to do and the good thing to do, but it is the smart thing to do. It's what we should all be doing to create a better society, not only for others, but for ourselves and for our family. You don't want to live in a society where you're afraid to go to the grocery store because the guy who can't feed his family is waiting in the parking lot with a gun or waiting to rob you. And that's not a society that you should want to live in. And so the way that you address that is by helping other people. And understanding that we are, in a sense, our brother's keeper. We are, in a sense, all tied together. And the failure of one can affect many. And so you want to pursue your own life and you want to try to do better for yourself, but along the way, lend a helping hand to those who you pass on your journey forward, and help them rise up and become part of a thriving community that is beneficial to all of us.
I think that's words well said, George. I can well go along with that. Now, let's move on to talking about your book, because this book has had some really amazing reviews. Your latest book has the title of Millennial Samurai, which I think is a very creative title.
Thank you. It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
And I believe you can get it in the UK.
Right.
On Amazon.
Oh yes, I'm sure we can. Yeah.
And it's really I'm very proud of this book.
Yeah.
It's let me kind of give you a nutshell of what it's about. So if I were to drop you off in the Amazon rainforest, and I were going to give you a duffel bag for your survival, right? you can think of certain things that would be in that duffel bag, right?
Right.
What would you put in a duffel bag for your own survival, right? You'd put water, you'd put matches, you'd put a compass, you'd put a knife, you might put a saw. There are certain things that you would put in that duffel bag, right?
Sure.
All right. If I'm going to drop you off in the middle of the 21st century, this is your duffel bag.
Okay.
And what it is it's broken down into 182 chapters. 182 chapters,
Wow.
but they're only 1 to 3 pages each. 1 to 3 pages each.
Yeah.
Okay? So for example, I've taken the subject of character and I've devoted 1 to 3 pages. And in those 1 to 3 pages, so compare and contrast, there are some University of Pennsylvania professors who have recently published a treatise on character, and it's 800 pages long. So you can write a great deal about character. So what do you put in 3 pages that convinces a person that character is an essential part of their life? That in order for them to have a successful and meaningful and happy life, they need to have character. What do you say in 3 pages that drives that point home, right? So I've done that for 182 different topics.
Right. Yeah.
Character, courage, commitment, compassion, collaboration, creativity, why you should smile, why you need to listen. And I've gone on and I've talked about issues that matter: economic inequality, racism, criminal justice reform, religion. I've looked at technology. I've looked at artificial intelligence, advances in genomics, 3D printing, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, blockchain technology. All of these different issues that are going to impact your life over the next 30 years, I'm introducing you to each of these issues, and I'm giving you a description. So I'm telling you what blockchain is about. I'm telling you about advances in genomics that you don't know about. I'm telling you about stem cell research that you may not know about. I'm telling you about glass information storage that you may not know about, asteroid mining, things that you are unlikely to know anything about, but that could profoundly impact the world that we live in over the next 30 years. So these are things that you should know about. Half of the book is made up of things that I did not know about before I started writing the book. These are things that I discovered in my reading and in my research. And as I discovered these things, I thought, my God, this is amazing. I couldn't believe what I was reading. And so I thought, I want to share this with other people, because if I don't know about this, there's a good chance they don't know about this. And if I'm impressed by it, there's a good chance that they'll be impressed by it. And if I'm glad that I've discovered it and that I now know it, there's a good chance that they will want to know about it as well. Let me give you one example. Asteroid mining. Do you know anything about asteroid mining?
I can only imagine or speculate. I'm not, I can't really, nothing in particular.
Okay, so you're the same as almost everyone. I didn't know anything about it, right? Most people don't know anything about it. So let me tell you a little bit about it. There's a company called Planetary Resources that's been formed by Larry Page and Eric Schmidt of Google. Okay, so these are multi-billionaires that are running one of the world's largest and most successful companies, and they are investing in a company called Planetary Resources, which is about asteroid mining. Well, why? Why are they investing in this company, right? Wouldn't you like to know? Maybe you'd like to invest. Maybe when this company goes public, you'd like to buy stock. Wouldn't you like to know why they're investing? Well, they've identified an asteroid called Davida, which they believe has $100 trillion worth of precious metals. Now, the U.S. GDP is only $18 trillion. The global GDP is only $73 trillion. They've identified a single asteroid that they believe has $100 trillion worth of precious minerals. Now, there are 5,000 mineable asteroids within our reach, around in our solar system, that can be mined, okay? Now, do you think that this is likely to be an industry of the future?
Yes.
Okay, right? So if these guys are getting involved, if this is the assets that they've identified, if they're attracting millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, then it is likely to develop into an industry. So you're going to want to know that. You're going to want to watch that. Perhaps your son would like a job in that area in the future and might want to train for that. It's clearly going to be a burgeoning industry. But the thing that's most interesting about asteroid mining, I haven't even told you. There's something more valuable on these asteroids than the $100 trillion worth of precious metals. Do you know what it is?
I can't guess.
Okay, it's water.
Ah.
And the reason that water is valuable, is immensely valuable, is because if you look at all of NASA's prior space missions, the fuel that powered all of those missions was made up of hydrogen and oxygen.
Right.
Which is water.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they can make fuel, they can make rocket fuel from the water on those asteroids. So they can get on the asteroid, extract the water, and turn it into rocket fuel.
Right.
Now, in order for you to take rocket fuel up from Earth to the asteroid, you need 10 tons of rocket fuel to transport 1 ton of rocket fuel, because you've got to escape Earth's gravity.
Right.
So to bring up 1 ton of rocket fuel, you would have to expend 10 tons of rocket fuel to lift that up to the asteroid.
I see.
So the ability to find water on these asteroids and turn it into rocket fuel is what will power future space missions from these asteroids to planets like Mars and Pluto and other places in the galaxy that we can't reach today because we don't have enough fuel.
Right.
So it will enable further space exploration.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's a very important point that you just made there.
Huge point. So this is how man's exploration of space will really take off. You know, the future of man's exploration of space will in large part be dependent upon this discovery of water on asteroids.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing discovery.
Yeah.
It's an amazing new opportunity, and it's something that none of us know anything about. Now, if I had been sitting here telling you about Coca-Cola, and we were back in the 1900s, and I were telling you that there's this famous or this fabulous drink, you know, you have to try it. It's called Coca-Cola, you know, and you'd go, Coca-Cola, I don't know anything about Coca-Cola. But you'd try it, and you'd realize how great it was, and you'd see that it was a public company, and you'd say, you know what? I think there's a future for Coca-Cola. I'm going to buy some stock in Coca-Cola. Right. Well, when you see Planetary Resources hit the New York Stock Exchange, you might want to buy a little stock, right?
Yep. You never know.
Information is power. And what Millennial Samurai does, what this book does, is it gives you power. It gives you knowledge, and it gives it to you in a painless, bite-sized formula that you don't have to read extensively. You know, you don't have to read a 200-page book on asteroid mining to understand the significance of asteroid mining. What you really want is to just understand the significance of it and be aware of it, right? So there are medical breakthroughs that might impact your life. You may be suffering from something, And I've got a chapter on medical breakthroughs, and I talk about 20 different breakthroughs in medicine and science that I think are significant and that you're going to want to know about. So there are all of these issues that educate you and empower you, and I talk about mindset development. I talk about gratitude and empathy and how these mindsets can change your life. You know, imagine waking up every morning with gratitude, right? Every morning when you get out of bed, you practice gratitude for just a few minutes. If you do that for a few minutes a day, and you do it for 21 days, you will develop a habit. Habits are formed in 21 days.
Okay.
Practice and repetition creates habits, right? Now, if you develop the habit of gratitude, it will actually change. There's a concept called neuroplasticity, another chapter in the book, about how your brain is wired, right? So you have neurons that connect, they disconnect, and they reconnect throughout your life, all right? We have massive amounts of information that impact us every second of the day, all right? 11 million bits of information impact your brain every second of the day. This has been happening since the day that you were born, okay? Over time, this information creates neuron connections that create pathways in the brain, right? If you are constantly being bombarded with negative information and negative thoughts, and you're surrounded by negative people, and you're surrounded by stress, and you're surrounded by adversity, then a lot of the information that's coming into your brain is developing negative neural pathways, superhighways, if you will. As future information enters the brain, it begins to move down these superhighways, right? And you start to perceive that information negatively. Whereas if you were in an environment that was very positive your whole life, and you were surrounded by positive people, and you always had encouragement, and you were listening to positive speeches, and watching positive programming, and listening to positive music, and having positive conversations, your brain would develop superhighways, neural pathways that are positive. And future information would move down those positive pathways, right? So how our brains develop gratitude, we were talking about gratitude. If you develop the habit of gratitude every day, over 21 days, you're going to develop the habit. Wake up every morning, think about what you're grateful for, you know, really feel about, you know, gratitude, sincere gratitude about your spouse, your job, your family, whatever you have going on, your health, whatever you have going on in your life that's positive, think about it, cause your brain to focus on it, do it every day, and develop that habit, and you will start to develop more positive programming in your brain, and you will start to experience a more positive life. So we can train our brains. One of the things about Millennial Samurai is that I analogize the human brain to the sword of the samurai, right? So what is Millennial Samurai? Millennial Samurai is basically taking the millennial generation, which are the most educated generation in history. They're the most technologically advanced. They're the most globally networked. They're the most ethnically diverse, right? They are the future. They are the largest generation in America. There are 85 million of them. They are the new generation that everybody is talking about. Just like in my generation, I was a baby boomer. There were 80 million of us, and we were the thing back in the day. Everybody was talking about baby boomers. Well, now nobody cares about baby boomers. They're all focused on millennials, right? And there's good reason for that, because millennials will be at the tip of the generational spear as humanity encounters the 21st century. I will be getting older. I will become a liability to society. I will be getting sick. I will eventually die. I am not going to be solving the world's problems. Who's going to be solving the world's problems? The young people that are coming up behind me. right? So we need to empower those people, right? We need to empower them. We need to educate them. We need to inspire them. We need to empower them, because humanity will depend on their formidability, on how capable they are at meeting the challenges and seizing the opportunities ahead. So we need to empower. It's good for society generally to empower these young people. We have to do it. And what I can do and what you can do as part of a slightly older generation is we can download our knowledge and our experience to these people and pass it along as a legacy. And as part of that process, what I've done is I've said, well, let's look historically at other groups that have been leaders and that have succeeded. And you look in Japanese society and you see the samurai. And the samurai were more than just warriors. They were the cultural and political and social and financial leaders of their time. And most of Japanese society, if you look at Japanese society today and you look at the politicians and the architects and the doctors and the engineers and the lawyers and the scientists, many of them trace their surnames back to the samurai.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these were a very their mindset was a very powerful mindset, and their mindset prized duty and loyalty and courage and character and commitment and compassion above all else. They were considered in Japanese society the perfect gentleman, right?
Right.
The flower arranging ceremony, the tea ceremony, all the great temples in Japanese society, this was all created by the samurai. So Millennial Samurai is basically saying, let's take the technological prowess of the millennial generation and let's marry it with the ancient core values of the samurai. And let's create a warrior for the future, right? Somebody that has all of this knowledge and intelligence and immense potential, and let's blend these ancient core values and inject those ancient core values into them, and we will create a warrior for the future. And samurai had a fidelity to a lord. In Millennial Samurai, their fidelity is not to some individual or corporation. Their fidelity, the Millennial Samurai that I describe and that I advocate, has fidelity to the family, to the community, and to society and humanity as a whole. That is their Lord. That is who they are pledged to. Okay? And so that, I believe, is the type of person that will lead their generation and future generations through the 21st century. And that's what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create a generation of Millennial Samurai. The book is all about.
Right. Well, you've given a very thorough description to that book there, and I expect the listeners will appreciate that is something pretty unique. I don't think that's ever been thought up before by anybody, has it?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
Not that I'm aware of.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. Now, George, we were also planning to discuss what you call your version of what should be America's top 5 priorities that need addressing.
Yes.
I'll just briefly run through them just for the benefit of the listeners. The first one is the impact of artificial intelligence on our society. And we'll come back to these and cover them in more detail, but I'll just run through them for everyone. The second one, which kind of leads on from that, is technology and employment. The technological revolution, how is that going to impact employment? People losing their jobs or having to retrain or being displaced in some manner. So again, this is an important topic. The next one you mentioned is economic inequality. And you make a few points there about how a lot of the underpaid workers are not keeping up in terms of pay rises, and that there's definitely an inequality which it's not going away.
Yes.
Number 4 on the list is to do with misinformation and critical thinking. Well, you mentioned there that social media could be to blame for a lot of kind of, we call it fake news, or kind of misleading people in some way, not always intentionally, but also in some way that you can't always predict the outcome. And obviously the importance of applying critical thinking and being able to apply it as a skill.
Yes.
Now, the last point that you mentioned is to do with political corruption, division, and dysfunction, which, of course, is a very big topic with all the upheavals that are going on in politics, not just in your country but in our country too, over here in the UK. So again, this is a very important topic, and I would you like to just from the start just go into a bit more detail on some of these for us?
Yes. So let's talk about artificial intelligence to begin with. Okay, so first of all, in 2014, theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking said that artificial intelligence would be the greatest event in human history. Greater than fire, greater than the wheel, greater than space travel, the internet, greater than anything man has ever encountered. That is how Stephen Hawking described what's called the singularity. The singularity is the moment in time when machine intelligence eclipses human intelligence, right? Now, Ray Kurzweil, who is the head of artificial intelligence for Google, okay? Bill Gates says that Ray Kurzweil knows more about artificial intelligence than anyone he knows, okay? Ray Kurzweil tells us that artificial intelligence will eclipse human intelligence in the event called the singularity in 2029. That's 10 years away.
That's 10 years away. Can I just ask you, how can he make such an accurate prediction there?
Well, several years ago, he said 2045. And now he's revised his prediction to 2029.
Okay.
And it may not be 29. It may be 2030, it may be 2032, it may be 2035. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen, and there is disagreement among scientists as to whether or not it will happen in 2029 or 2039, or 2049. It really doesn't matter, because it's coming like a freight train, and it's going to happen during our lifetime. It's going to happen during your lifetime, it's going to happen during my lifetime, and it's certainly going to happen during our children's lifetime.
Right.
What is most significant is not that machines will become our equal. What is most significant is when they surpass us. Kurzweil predicts that once machine learning hits the singularity, it will increase at a geometric rate, to the point at a speed that we can't even fathom. So imagine the Sunway Tau Light supercomputer that China has that calculates at 124 petaflops per second, which is 124 quadrillion calculations per second, or the new computer that they're coming out with that will calculate at 1 quintillion calculations per second, which is 1 billion calculations per second. Now take all the knowledge, all the literature, all the books in the Library of Congress, or in Great Britain's largest libraries, and feed this into a supercomputer, feed our health records into this supercomputer, feed our financial data into this supercomputer, okay? There have been data breaches all over the world where hundreds of millions of people's data has been stolen, has been hacked, right? Who do you think is going to use those 100 millions people's of data, right? So it's for machine learning. It's for artificial intelligence. It's to feed these hungry supercomputers with information. That's what's going on with that data. That's why that data is being stolen, so that it can go into these supercomputers. Kurzweil predicts that by the 2040s, so now we're not talking 2029, we're talking 2039, 2040, or 2049, 20 years later, that artificial intelligence will not be our equal, Anthony. It will be a billion times more capable than human intelligence in the 2040s.
This is unimaginable. What you're saying is mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling.
It's
exactly.
absolutely mind-boggling.
Tsunami. That is a tsunami of technological change that I'm describing. Now, this isn't just me. This is the head of artificial intelligence for Google. Okay? This is one of the leading authorities in the world in artificial intelligence that is saying this. Now, Bill Gates says, I don't know why more people aren't talking about this. Well, either do I, Anthony, but you and I are talking about it.
At least we're talking about it.
You're adding tremendous value to your viewers by bringing this information to them. And this is the type of information that I'm trying to bring to the world through Millennial Samurai.
Right.
So we've got a tsunami of technological change. Now, people can argue. Don't allow the conversation to get sidetracked by somebody saying, well, this may not happen in 2029, or this may not happen in the 2040s. It may take another 20 or 30 years. Who cares? It doesn't matter. The point is that this is coming like a freight train. And the exact date of the arrival of the train may be uncertain, but the train is coming.
Right.
And it's going to arrive. Right? So we need to start talking about it, and we need to start thinking about it, and we need to start developing our policies and how we're going to embrace this or limit this or use this or become influenced by it, right? Our lives are going to change in ways that the human brain is incapable of even comprehending. Your brain has no ability to comprehend the consequences of an intelligence that are a billion times more capable than your brain.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, if this is what you're saying is 99.9% certain. We just can't predict what the outcome will be. All we can do is hope that the outcome is good. Or
we have to do more than hope. We can influence this. Okay, we're not powerless. This is the interesting thing.
Okay.
The human being, you, Anthony, and I, and all the people watching, we are not powerless. This is something that is a huge point because when we think that we are powerless, society starts to break down. So what happens is that if, let's say, the wealthy class, you see people who are the wealthiest among us, right? The most successful among us. These are the people that are the tech mavens and the captains of industry and the people that are, if you will, on the top of the food chain, right? All right. Some of these people are now buying estates in secure compounds. It's happening in the United States. There are developments that are being pursued and being sold off to wealthy individuals that are essentially like compounds, right? Where they have security, They have underground bunkers. They have provisions that can last them through a disaster. Right? This is going on.
Yeah.
Now it's not widespread yet. It's not something that's full blown panic or anything like that. But there are movements in that direction where these communities are being established and parcels are being sold off and acquired and people are building, for the future. If the people that are doing that are people who have taken essentially a fatalistic view of what the future looks like, right? They're worried, they're concerned, and whether or not this may be their plan A or it may be their plan B. It's always good to have a plan B. And I don't fault them for having a plan B, right? But it cannot become our plan A. Because if it becomes our plan A, if everybody starts to take this fatalistic attitude towards the future, then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We will cause our future to be dystopian if we believe that it's going to be that way, right? So I am not frightened by these things. I am excited by these things. I don't run from problems. I run after them. I run towards them. I try to fix them. I don't wait for things to happen. I cause things to happen. Okay? So this is how I lead my life, and this is how I want other people to lead their life, and this is how I want Millennial Samurai to lead their life. I want them to run after problems, not run away from them. Okay?
Okay.
So don't look at the technological tsunami as all bad. There is opportunity in adversity. So whatever happens that's bad, you find opportunity in it, right? This is, throughout our lives, we have good things that happen to us, and we have bad things that happen to us. Now, if you only take the good things and you celebrate them and you're joyous about the good things, and you sit and you moan and you complain and you cry about the bad things, you're going to have you're not properly utilizing the bad things. In every bad thing, there is an opportunity. There is a good thing that can come out of it. You have to find it.
Okay.
You have to look for it. Okay? And I can give you example after example. The guy who's let's say a gangbanger, criminal, type guy, like 50 Cent, right? 50 Cent is a rapper in the United States, right? So criminal turned rapper, right? His background actually provides him with the street cred to talk to this audience and to become famous with this audience, okay? So he's taking this negative background and he's turned it into an asset, right? So because of his background, he's got more street cred than, let's say, another kid who didn't have his background and is trying to rap. And people look at that rapper and they look at 50 Cent and they say, well, 50 Cent's more authentic. He's more urban. He's more real. He's more gritty. He's more grunge.
Sure.
I want to listen to him.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. That makes sense.
He's taken what could be a handicap in any other context, and he's turned it into an asset.
Okay.
Right? You can do that. You can do that in many ways. You look at the price of oil going up. So there's a drone strike in Saudi Arabia. Wiped out half of their oil production capacity, 5% of the world's oil supply. The fact that there's a drone strike against a Saudi Arabian oil field that they could not protect against tells you how the world is changing, right? Future wars will not be fought with battleships and aircraft carriers and cruise missiles. Future wars will be fought on our laptop computers, okay? Using disinformation, which we're going to get to, okay? So the point is that as the world changes, we're going to need to pivot and adapt to changing circumstances on a constant basis. We're going to have to engage in reskilling and retooling and relearning on a constant basis. We're going to have to have optimism and belief in ourselves. And we're going to have to continue to move forward and look for opportunities in adversities wherever they appear, and then celebrate successes and triumphs along the way. But in every action we take, if we fail, we learn. Get something out of all of your failures. Learn from them. Find opportunity in them. Okay? So these are some of the things that I talk about when we talk about technology and employment. Okay? I read something. I made a note. Let me read this to you. So the biggest killer of men under 45 in the UK is suicide. Loneliness, isolation, and perceived inability to meet society's expectations, right? Okay. McKinsey and Company, a big global consulting firm, came out with a new report that says employment for African Americans will worsen dramatically from automation. Okay? So many of the people that are at the lowest earning levels in our society are going to be hit most adversely by this new growth in automation, right? Some examples. America, we have 3 million truck drivers. The number one job for an American male is truck driver.
Okay.
Chrysler Dahmer is already doing cross-country trips in driverless semis. 10 years, there won't be any truck drivers. There will be driverless semis. Uber drivers. Today, there are 3.9 million in the U.S. Okay, 3.9 million Uber drivers. There are supposed to be 5 million in the next year or two. These jobs, when you have self-driving vehicles, these jobs are going to be gone. Franchisees, franchise workers, like in my company, people that work at serving food or making food, right?
Right.
These jobs can become automated. Amazon is introducing 3,000 stores in the United States over the next 2 years that are cashierless. You will walk in, you will pick up your item from the shelf, and you will walk out the door. You will not have to talk to anyone. You will not have to ring up anything. The moment you walk into the store, a combination of sensors and cameras and technology will identify you, will have access to your phone, will have access to your payment information, and you'll be able to walk in, pick up an item, and walk out, and you will receive your phone. You'll get a notice as you're walking out the turnstile. You'll get a notice on your phone that says, here's your receipt for the jug of milk that you just purchased, right? In the future, when you want shoes for your child, you won't go into a store in a mall to buy those shoes. You'll take a 3D image of your child's foot with your phone, and you will print a pair of shoes on the 3D printer on your kitchen table. The cost of 3D printers over the last 10 years has come down from $18,000 to $500, and they are 10 times faster than they were 10 years ago. So the price has gone down 10 times or more. The speed has gone up 10 times or more. And this is what's happening with technology. Yep. Clerical workers, number one job for an American female in the United States, gone. The Guardian, one of your publications, did a study by the Royal Society of Arts. And it said that 7 out of 10 UK workers are, quote, chronically broke. Okay? 32% have less than 500 pounds in savings. Okay? Something like 78% of Americans have less than $500 in savings. Okay? So people are economically insecure. They're 1 or 2 mishaps away from financial crisis, right? They can't afford to lose their jobs. They're barely making it on the jobs they have. Okay? So this is why are we talking about some of the other issues that we're talking about, and we're not talking about these 2 issues? Why is no one talking about these 2 issues? We're concerned about immigration. Immigrants are going to take our jobs. You know what? No. Computers are going to take your jobs at a far greater rate, much more quickly, and much more dramatically then any horde of immigrants could possibly take your jobs. Okay, so immigration is an issue. We had the Syrian crisis, worst humanitarian crisis since World War II.
Sure.
7 million people displaced all throughout Europe, changing the face of Europe, changing your cultures. It's a huge culture shock for everybody who's experiencing this, right?
Yep.
So, how do 7 million people get displaced from their country, right? Wars, munitions, these types of things, these are the things we need to be talking about, right? These are the big issues, right? Economic inequality. In the United States, the middle class is disappearing. 3 people in the United States have more wealth than the bottom 150 million people. 3 human beings have more wealth than the bottom 150 million people in the United States. About 30 people in the world have more wealth than 1.5 billion people. 30 people. Okay?
Yeah.
So does anybody think that this is sustainable? Right? I don't see how this is sustainable, personally, right? So that's economic inequality. Then we've got misinformation.
Yep.
Misinformation and critical thinking. Okay? The human brain, what I've learned about the human brain is that it's like a sponge. It's extremely malleable, right? This is how we learn. Right? We learn because our brains are extremely malleable and able to take in vast quantities of information.
Sure.
Think about a few facts. Number 1, your brain takes in 11 million bits of information per second. This has happened since the day you were born. Okay? Now, your conscious brain can only process 15 to 50 bits of information per second. What that means is that the vast majority of information is entering your brain through your subconscious outside of your conscious awareness. You're not even aware of it. Okay? There was a study in England where they took wine, and they were selling wine. At a grocery store. And they had French wine and they had German wine, and the wines were paired for their similarity, meaning that the wine had the same sweetness and so they did this study, and the wines in England, they had French wines and they had German wines at a grocery store, and they were paired for similarity. So they were the same type of wine, essentially.
Sure.
And above the wine, they had music playing. And on one day, they would have French music, and on the next day, they would have German music. On the days that the French music was playing, 75% of the wine purchased was French wine. On the days that the German music was playing, 74% of the wine purchased was German. When the people went to the checkout counter and they were asked if the music had any influence on their purchasing decision, 93% of the people said no. It had no influence. But clearly from the statistics on purchases, it did have an influence.
Yep.
Okay? So in other words, we are susceptible to having our decisions be influenced by things like subliminal advertising, music, all sorts of advertisers have been perfecting the manipulation of people and buyers for generations. And we've learned more about the human brain in the last 5 years than in the last 5,000 years. So people are learning how to manipulate us on a dramatic scale. And then you have this economic insecurity. You start to put these facts together. you have pockets of economic security, you have an ability through social media to geo-target these pockets with information, false information. You have brains that the vast majority of information comes into outside of the person's conscious awareness. You have extreme malleability and susceptibility to suggestion and to manipulation. And you have Russian hacking of trying to hack the US elections in 2016. You have Amazon.com, which owns the Washington Post, that has an algorithm that allows them to type in a sentence, give me a story about why Donald Trump is the worst president in history, and that machine algorithm will give you a 750-word article on exactly what you've asked for without any further human involvement, without a reporter. They will produce this article. The Washington Post ran 500 of these articles during the 2016 election, all drafted by computers. Nobody knew, and the articles received 500,000 likes. That technology is being licensed to newspapers around the country and around the world. That technology could also be licensed to a dictator, or to a despot, or to a billionaire, or to a government. Or they could create their own technology that's similar. The implications of this for manipulating the general population with misinformation are huge. And again, this is an issue that no one is talking about. Finally, you have political corruption, division, and dysfunction, right? In the United States, we are more divided. There have been studies that have shown that we are more divided than at any time since the Civil War. And now we have media that is segmented and equally polarized, that is appealing to the confirmation biases of a segmented market. So if you're CNN, you're talking to an audience that believes a certain way. If you're Fox, you're talking to an audience that's more conservative, that believes the way they believe. The programming on these networks is appealing to the confirmation biases of their audience. So Fox delivers conservative information to a conservative audience. CNN and MSNBC deliver liberal information to a liberal audience. This has the effect of hardening our confirmation biases. So if you were already biased, and now day after day after day, we're watching reinforcing programming, you're becoming even more biased. Your bias is becoming more hardened and more unsusceptible to having an open mind. And so, all of these factors converge in a way that, is quite significant. I mean, extraordinarily significant in my mind. And yet we're not talking about them because our politicians are fighting one another for power and control. They want to be in control. And so whether it's ideologically driven or whether it's economically driven, whatever the reason, it doesn't really matter. We hire these people, we hire these politicians to do the public business on behalf of all of us. And if the country is equally divided, in your country it might be equally divided in favor of Brexit or against Brexit. In my country it might be equally divided between liberals and conservatives. The job of a politician, in my mind, is to represent the entire community, all of us, and do all of our business and help move the country forward, not undermine the other side at every single opportunity. Find what's good that the other side is saying and work with them. Whether you're conservative or Republican, have an open mind, be approachable, and willing to listen to alternative perspectives, right? And so this is sort of the model that I'm trying to architect for people generally, is that your perception, the way you see the world, is not necessarily truth. That a lot of what's going on in our minds is not necessarily accurate, right? So what are these thoughts that we have? What are they essentially? Essentially, they are transitory packets of sensory information that is derived from our five senses that may or may not represent truth or facts, right? They're thoughts, they're passing clouds. And we can choose to pull them in and believe in them and hold them as truths, but they're not always truths. Stuart Brand, a futurist, tells us that in coming decades, evolution, the concept of evolution, may be laughable. We may think, oh my God, we used to think that evolution was the way we all got here. Or at one point we thought the world was flat, and then we discovered that it was round. Truths are not necessarily truths, right? So you need to constantly have an open mind. You need to engage in critical thinking. You need to, not accept information at face value. And you need to have a positive outlook and optimism and realism and look at each issue and look at each human being and their opinion with a desire to find the truth and a desire to learn, not a desire for validation or to pat your ego on the back or to think that your worldview is accurate. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about all of us. What do we all think? What are our combined perspectives telling us? What is the truth that we can find in all of this information? That's what I think we need to be doing. And that's what I talk about, that's what I speak about, and that's what I write about. Right.
Well, George, thank you very much for going into detail there. You touched on so many points, and it's this type of discussion could go on for hours and hours if we were to let it. But unfortunately, I think we have to probably draw it to a close. But before I close the podcast, George, just one final question. What do you believe people should do in order to move their lives forward in a positive direction, knowing all these things, that the future is very uncertain, there'll be many changes coming? What guidance can you give to people as something that they can take away with them today?
Okay, so first of all, I want to give you a couple of quick points about some of the good things about artificial intelligence that I may not have mentioned. Kurzweil also predicts that by the 2040s we will have nanobots pulsing through our bloodstream, curing all of our diseases. Okay, so there are many positive things.
Sure.
He believes that by the 2040s our neural cortex will be connected to the cloud, and that you won't have to look on your phone to answer questions. All of the world's knowledge will be available to all of us instantaneously. Now again, it doesn't matter whether Kurzweil's right that this happens in 30 years. It may be 60 years, it may be 90 years. But at some point, these changes are coming, and some of them are going to be extraordinarily positive. And so I believe that we should be optimistic. I believe that in the final analysis, the advice that I have for people is that you are living in the most extraordinary period in human history. Celebrate it. Be excited about it. It's good to be alive today, because you are going to be living in the most extraordinary period that man has ever known. So that's the first thing. Don't be frightened. Be excited. The second thing is have an open mind. Frank Zappa said, a mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it isn't open, right? So have an open mind. Next, understand that you have a limited perspective, okay? You see the world through your colored glasses. Someone else sees the world through a different shade of colored glasses. Look at that other person as an asset rather than a liability. Look at their perspective as something that you can profit from. So what does that mean? It means make friends with people that are outside your normal circle. It means watch media that you don't normally watch. Listen to things that challenge your current worldview. Try to profit from multiple perspectives and understand that multiple perspectives represent an asset, not a liability. So instead of lamenting the fact that someone doesn't agree with you, think of it as a moment of celebration. My God, I've met someone who doesn't agree with me. This is an opportunity for me to listen and to learn and to broaden my understanding. Okay? These mindset changes are the kinds of changes that can move humanity in the right direction. And you want to be one of those contributing forces to moving humanity in that positive direction. So have an open mind, practice gratitude, be courageous, believe in yourself, believe in others, believe in our collective future, work towards advancing our collective future. Work towards advancing your own future, but at the same time, lift others along the way and help them to have a brighter future as well, which will ultimately inure to your benefit and the benefit of your children. Read and learn, sharpen your sword. You can increase your IQ. Scientists have proven that the brain is not static. It can develop, and it does develop. And you can train your brain, and you can control your thoughts, and you can become more intelligent, and you can raise your IQ. This is your samurai sword. Sharpen that sword. Every day you should engage in learning, lifelong learning. Develop a love of learning. Devour information. Make new relationships. Form new contacts. Prize the relationships that you have. Cultivate them, nurture them. These are all the advice that I would share with you. There's much more in the book, Millennial Samurai. It's available on Amazon. I would encourage you to get it. It's really an amazing book, and I think you'd thoroughly enjoy it. If you enjoyed this conversation, you would absolutely love Millennial Samurai, the book.
That's great, George. Well, you've said some very profound words there, and a very powerful message, which I think, I hope the viewers have been able to absorb at least some of that information that you've just given us, because there's such a lot there, and as I say, we could spend probably all night discussing these topics. But I'd like to say thank you, a big thank you to George Chanos for joining us today, and I hope all the listeners found something useful in his conversation there today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.